Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am your host Donna. Join me as we deep dive into real and raw conversations about love, life, money and business. Hey guys, it's Donna. Welcome to episode 2 of the podcast, Boundaries or Past Hurt Servicing. So I just want to have a bit of chat with you guys today about boundaries because I noticed that I have 2 types of people that come to me. So the first type is somebody who has loosey-goosey boundaries, and the other type is somebody who has tighty-whitey boundaries. So they're so tight, they're so big that nobody gets to get in. And I wanted to talk about these because there's a big gap between having a boundary and living from a space of our past hurts surfacing and our past wounds coming up. And so I kind of want to look at it like on a scale. I look at most things on a scale of 1 to 10. So if we had 1 being loosey-goosey boundaries, and we had 10 being tighty-whitey boundaries, and then we have 5 being Goldilocks' boundaries, so they're just right? I want to look at both ends of the spectrum, and then what I want to do is I want to kind of, dive into how we can have the level 5 boundaries, so the Goldilocks boundaries. They're those middle ground, they're fair, they're flexible, they're good for you, good for others, good for the greater good. That's a question that you always want to be asking yourself. Is this good for me? Yes. Does it work for the other person? Yes. And, how does it impact everybody else outside of us? Is it good for them? Yes. Okay. So let's start off with the loosey-goosey boundaries. So this used to be me. This used to be me in the sense where, I'd say yes to something where internally I was like, no, I don't want to, like things like, Donna, can you bring some baked goods for, tomorrow's morning tea at the office? And I'd be sitting there going, I don't have time to bake anything tonight. It's going to be a quick dash to Coles, and even that wasn't something that I planned to do in my night. How on earth am I going to do this? You've just added to my list. And I could just feel myself feeling like begrudgingly like, oh, I don't have time for this, and so I wanted to say no, but I didn't. And then I'd sit there and I'd feel that pang of resentment. And how this typically shows up in business is it typically shows up in business as, allowing clients to make late payments or spending a lot more time on something than, what you've actually agreed to with that person, or making an agreement with that person. And then when they don't meet you at the party, so to speak, you allow that thing to be let go of. And this doesn't just affect business, by the way. This is both business and professionally. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who has quite tight boundaries and rules. So it needs to be done a certain way. They're hard to approach. You feel like it's actually really hard work being around them. There's always this expectation that you're going to be a certain way, or you're going to do a certain thing for them. It's always this like give to them. And you never really feel like it's reciprocated in the same way. Reciprocated? I think I said that right. That's something you guys will come to learn about me. Sometimes I'll say a word and it doesn't quite come out right. So, that's the other side of things where, as a leader, it doesn't really work for you because, you might have clients or you might have team members who want to come to you and want to ask you questions, but they don't feel comfortable doing that because there's these really tight boundaries and rules and this, almost invisible gate around you where they feel like they can't go in, they feel like they can't be vulnerable with you. And so this is the time where you quite often have people who make mistakes. You'll have team members who make mistakes a lot because they don't feel comfortable coming to you because they don't know what sort of response they're going to get from you. They don't feel comfortable being vulnerable, right? And then we've got the, that middle ground, so the Goldilocks one, which I'm going to get into soon. So first of all, I want to kind of, before we do go into that Goldilocks space, why is it that we don't say no? Why is it that on that loosey-goosey end, we're so we feel like this need to say yes to everything. And, why is it on the other end of the spectrum where we have those really tight boundaries that we don't feel like we can say yes to things? So when this typically happens, it's usually coming from a space of past wounds, past hurt surfacing. So when we're about 2 years old, this is where we start to learn the word no, right? And no is our boundary. So you'll see it like, with little kids, they're like, no to everything. And it doesn't even sometimes make sense, but they're just saying the word no. And what typically happens is that we tend to get quite frustrated with this because it's like, oh my goodness, would you just say yes to something? They're always saying no to everything. because they've just learnt this new word. And it's actually a really important part of their development because they're actually learning what a boundary is by them saying no. But what tends to happen is for most parents or, even siblings, I used to say to my brothers, say yes, would you? When this happens, it's quite annoying. So we go, don't say no, we say yes. And so we're actually violating the fact that they're learning what a boundary is in that moment. The other side of the spectrum where we've got those really tight boundaries is where typically we've had, past hurt. So somebody's hurt us, and so we've put this wall up, this invisible wall, and so nobody can get in. We don't have to be vulnerable with them. They don't have to be vulnerable with us. We get it all done and that's it. And so this happens, but it doesn't allow for depth of relationship. It doesn't allow for connection. It doesn't allow for movement of anything. It allows for a lot of, again, resentment to build up on the other side there. So what we actually want is we want that, that middle ground, that 5 Goldilocks boundaries, so they're just right. And how we do that is for those who are sitting on the loosey-goosey end, so the one in the spectrum, where you feel like you have to say yes to everything. What I want you guys to do is I want you to practice saying no, even when it's going to rock the boat, because that's the biggest fear that you guys have here is like, I'm really scared it's going to rock the boat. And you know what? It probably will to begin with, because people aren't used to you saying no. So you've just shifted the dial. You've made this new change. But for them, they're like, but you always say yes. Who is this person? So when you're first learning to set these boundaries, there's probably going to be a bit of resistance to this because people are always used to you saying yes, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat that for you, because if I did, I'd be lying to you to say that this is going to be easy. It's not. Coming from somebody who used to do the loosey-goosey boundaries, it is a hard space to be in, right? So these, having to say no to something is going to feel uncomfortable. But guys, I guarantee you when you do, what tends to happen is people start to respect that. People start to go, wow, I wish I had boundaries like that. And if you think about somebody who you really, really admire, the likelihood is that person probably is a really kind, approachable person, but yet you know that there's that invisible line that you would never cross with them. That's what you're aiming for there, yeah? And by saying no sometimes where it feels appropriate to you, then what's going to happen is you're going to go, you know what, I feel really good about myself. I feel really empowered about myself. On the other end, the one who has the tiny whitey type boundaries, what the question I want you to ask yourself is, what would happen if I said yes here? Is this request actually reasonable? What if I was to let my guard down a little bit? And I want you guys to start to notice that, people might find a little bit at first, they go, oh, what's happening here? This person's usually really on edge. They're really, guarded. So there may be a bit of trepidation there to begin with. But once it gets past that, I want you to notice that, once you kind of let those walls down, how much better you're able to communicate with people, how much more seamless things run for you because they're not afraid to approach you. So basically that level 5 is I am approachable, I am flexible but fair, so if there feels like a line, then I will draw that line and I will let you know what that line is. But I'm not inflexible because that's just not a reality of life. We have to be, if COVID-19 has taught us anything, guys, is that we have to be flexible sometimes. So I trust that this has been helpful. If you have enjoyed this, please subscribe to the podcast. Or if you'd like to join my socials, my VA has popped the links below. I'd love to see you over there and, really get to know you and engage with you more. So yeah, follow the links and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast episode. Okay, bye for now.